Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I thought I would cover a topic that I haven't covered since I've gained about my last 10,000 subscribers, so there's probably a lot of people who aren't aware of this. And what I want to discuss is this really silly notion. It makes sense at first, but it's a silly notion that dumbbells can be used to easily fix unilateral or left to right imbalances in your body because, they put the same weight on each side. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this, because this doesn't really address the real causes of unilateral imbalances. The causes of unilateral imbalances is not because you have more weight on one side than the other. I'm going to put this very clearly. If you put 315 pounds on a barbell and you put the same number of plates on each side, people do realize the vast majority of the weight of a barbell isn't in the middle. It's on those collars on the ends. Those big round pieces, those are weights. The collars weigh a lot. There's very little weight in the middle, and if you stack all those plates on the side, all those 45s, your left to right is 100% balanced. In fact, dumbbells are more likely to have less weight on each dumbbell than good plates in a barbell is on each side. You don't have less weight on the sides. People develop imbalances by using compensatory strength and uneven loading in the way they perform exercises. Now, some people say, Jason, don't you have some imbalances on that first DEXA scan? Yeah, I might have improved it. I'm going to have over time, because you're going to see what I've done to improve them. My imbalances come from an injury, right? A very serious injury where I had a chunk of muscle tissue actually removed and had to have tendon and everything reattached. I had a major injury. And because of that, I've used a lot of mixed grip on my deadlift, exclusively one direction, and for a while I quit squatting completely, and the deadlift was my main lower body exercise. So because I had so much uneven loading, that created imbalances. I have dramatically improved my imbalances, and I've almost, at least on DEXA scans, caught my left arm back up to my right using exclusively barbell work and weighted body weight exercises, just by focusing on good technique, perfectly aligning my feet to where my toes and feet are in the exact same position on each side when I squat, being very careful of elbow position and keeping tightness on a bench press so that the bar comes up evenly on both sides and I don't shift under it at the lockout, right? Things like that. That shifting is what causes it. It's by people being too loose on things like squats and not having their feet perfectly, like one toe angled more than the other, right? Things that let you shift with your compensatory strength and let your strong side take over on an exercise. That's how we develop these imbalances, right? That's how they actually occur. And because it's normal for us to strain and grind and adjust our position through an exercise when it gets hard, right? That's human nature. Humans use compensatory strength. But by focusing on tighter technique, tighter form, evenness, placing your hands and feet perfectly, not letting your body shift, and if you have one side that starts to lift faster than the other, being consciously aware of it and driving through with more balance. That's how you correct these things. And that's what's working just fine for me. And once I've had several DEXA scans, I'll be able to show you guys a comparison side by side how I fix that stuff myself without using dumbbells. And what people need to realize, people who think that have clearly never watched other people lift. Like, if people really and truly think that the dumbbell magically removes these problems, it doesn't. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, if you have been doing only barbell work and you were to go get a DEXA scan and have a muscle imbalance, and you were to switch, let's say it's all in your upper body, and you were to switch exclusively to dumbbells for the next 6 months without adjusting the technique that you were using, and you just do the exact same things you were doing but with dumbbells instead, your muscle imbalance is going to get worse. The dumbbells will actually make it worse, because it's not because of the amount of weight you have on each side. It's because of the way that you shift to favor your strong sides. So in other words, if you're doing just dumbbell presses now and you're doing the exact same where you shift a little bit, you see what I just did right there? What just happened? Does it matter if I have 120 pounds in each hand? No, because I shifted to make the one side stronger. I probably need to put a heavier weight in the other hand just to compensate for my piss poor form, to balance it back out. Or I should probably clean my form up and learn not to shift to the side and instead drive your back into the bench. And also learning that when things start to imbalance, you need to quit that rep. It's grinding reps through that you're not capable of doing that causes you to use compensatory strength to make the stronger side take over. And what people need to remember, with a barbell, it's actually harder to get further out of line. It's like, well, what do you mean? Because the barbell locks your hands in the same position, whether it's a row, a bench press, an overhead press, right? You're locked in. Unless you can shift your hands, slide it down the bar, which you can't when lifting a heavy weight, you can't really shift the whole thing over. Like everything has to come over, and it holds you in tighter than dumbbells. With dumbbells, there's that easier this happening, right? Well, any straying of one side an inch further out than the other, which is a lot easier to do with a dumbbell, isn't it? Without even the body shifting, right? It's easier for us to take our easier side and to just bring it in a little bit, right? You can't do that as easily with the barbell. The whole thing shifts and you can feel your body move more. If anything, dumbbells create a propensity to make this even worse, right? It's the opposite of what you want. Now, people will say, yeah, but you can do the one-arm stuff. You know, you can do unilateral. Well, I want people to ask that as a serious question too. Think about doing dumbbell curls one arm at a time, or doing one-arm dumbbell rows instead of a barbell. Well, first of all, those one-arm dumbbell rows do not have the same total hypertrophy potential, because part of the benefit you get out of a row instead of just doing a pull-up or a chin-up is the fact that you get hip involved, you get core involved, you get more muscles involved. That's what makes it a great full body hypertrophy exercise. Well, you just remove that anyway, so you've lost all that benefit. So you're just trying to do it for purely your lats and biceps and everything else. You do realize if you have one side stronger than the other, because you're not doing it all balanced where you have to do it together, you can also do shifting to where you use slightly different form on each side. In fact, when you're doing things unilateral, you might, one at a time, you might find that you use a slightly different technique on your left and your right. So even if you're using the same weight, let's say you're using a 40-pound dumbbell to curl just one arm at a time, or you are using a 100-pound dumbbell to do one-arm dumbbell rows, because you're doing them separate and you're setting your body up separately and bracing yourself slightly differently, you might actually have a slightly different angle on that pull when you do the left versus the right with the dumbbell. So even though you might have the same weight, your line of pull might end up being slightly different, in which case, if you're doing a different line of pull over months and months and months, even with the same dumbbell for each side, what's going to happen? You're going to have slightly different tension on the exercise. So if you have an existing muscle imbalance, if you end up cheating slightly more on one or the other, and the guys cheat on concentration curls, right? You guys watch guys do this. They cheat on concentration curls. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Cheating on isolation movements makes them not isolation movements, which gives them more hypertrophy potential. I mean, trying to isolate a muscle is kind of silly from a overall growth perspective. So there's nothing wrong with cheating on them, but if you think that that's going to give you even loading, what if you cheat more on the 10th rep on your left side than you do with your right every time? What happens? Your right side gets more growth stimulation, and it might not matter from one workout, but it's going to matter after 100 workouts, right? It's going to matter after 100 sets of curls if you actually work harder on the 10th rep, because you're a little stricter and you cheat less for the right side than for the left. And if your right was already stronger and it's doing more work, what's going to happen? It's going to grow just a little tiny bit faster. So if you had a muscle imbalance, you're going to make it worse. Whereas if you were using a barbell to do the same stuff, the amount of cheating is going to be pretty even on each side, as long as you're focused on keeping your torso in line and your body straight and not shifting left to right. Then it's going to end up being more even, as long as you're focused on each side of the bar coming up at the same speed. And you're keeping your hands in the exact same position so that not one of them isn't further out more than the other on any of the barbell exercises, because you're ensuring you're gripping the same spot. More likely to occur. And as far as all the different lines of pulls and people shifting their bodies, even machines aren't the answer. Because look how many guys, when you watch them doing a hammer strength chest press, when it starts getting hard, they grind to one side. Their body shifts against the pad an inch or two. That creates uneven loading even when locked into a machine. That will create muscle imbalances, right? And that doesn't mean don't lift heavy weights. What that means is that your final reps or your heaviest reps or your heaviest sets, you need to make sure that you're not shifting the balance of the weight over or moving your body. And that's exactly what people do, because you can't shift the machine over. People sitting inside of a machine will literally shift their body. And you see it all the time on chest presses, but you even see it on some of the rowing things. People will move their bodies inside the machine to compensate. That creates muscle imbalances. So when you think about it realistically, the dumbbells are not the solution. Putting your body in a tighter position, using better form, that's actually the key. And by good form, I don't mean not cheating. Cheat reps are fine. I'm talking about shifting the load of your body versus the weight in a left or right direction. I'm talking about putting your hands in the same position, making sure your elbows on each side stay in the same position, making sure your feet, heels, toes are exactly evenly spaced. And people say, well, what if you have one leg longer than the other? Well, get that measured and get a shim for your shoes, and then go back to using the exact same stance on each side. Right? There are solutions to this stuff. But all of it has to do with placing yourself evenly and having a strong core, embracing yourself to where you move the left and right side evenly up on every exercise. That's the key to correcting unilateral muscle imbalances. It's a technique issue, not an exercise selection issue. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.